So the project in Liberia is all about infrastructure. So it's about accessing the railway, building the additional capacity that's needed on the railway, and then also building the port capacity, firstly at Buchanan, and then completing the studies to look at whether the big project stays in Buchanan or whether we go to a build of a new port facility. And then we look at further expansion capacity on the corridor and to what we call the Liberty Corridor phase, where we look with the government at the opportunities that additional capacity above and beyond the 30 million tonnes of bulk capacity that we've requested is possible and probable. So, and how that fits with the economic, future for Liberia and the project itself.
First of all, I'd like to give credit to the President, because he's been very firm on his position that Liberia should transition to a real system that is multi-user, that it shouldn't just be dominated by one sector, our sector, the iron ore sector. He'd like to see freight companies, he'd like to see agriculture companies and other passenger entities taking advantage of the rail asset. The rail is an asset of the country. It's a sovereign asset, as is the port, or as are our ports. And these are assets that the country can leverage. So when you move to a multi-user system, the country is now able to use those sovereign assets for its economic benefit. So not only does one company use a system or a rail, multiple users can access the rail so that the country benefits and generates more income, more revenue, creates more employment opportunities for people. So that's the transition that we see, and that's what we've always envisioned as a company.
The change there is that you're going away from a single company that has attached to a mine that runs the railway, and the issue there is, of course, that mines always have a life, and at the end of the life, if there's nobody else using the railway, then there's no further economic benefit generated. So the change that President Boakai has pushed through with his policy is to separate that mine life from the railway, and that then protects the future beyond the life of a mine, or beyond the life of a mining company who's maybe at the whim of international markets. So the railway and the investment grows beyond just a single user and becomes available to other users, to the general population for freight in both directions. We are here now moving to ratification, and I think that really, along with the National Rail Authority, cements the vision that President Boakai has for the future of Liberian railways. And if you look at the history of economic development elsewhere in the world, railways are usually the centerpiece of infrastructure.
Absolutely.
Attached to a port that provides that economic opportunity, and I think that's one of the big reason why we're here, and also the reason why I think you'll see this multi-user system develop further as more companies grow their understanding of what's available in Liberia. It's great to have an iron ore resource or a mine, but unless it's actually connected to good infrastructure, you really have only a mountain of material that you can't move. So you have a stranded asset. In Liberia, you've got an existing railway that was built a long time ago and has been subsequently rebuilt, and it's now running on what we call a standard gauge with a 30-ton axle load. So it's essentially a heavy haul railway in railway land, as they say, and that means it's capable of taking quite large tonnages on the trains down into the port. Having that already in Liberia and owned by the government and operated by another company is a really a big advantage for Liberia to enable the resources that it has alongside that railway, and that we've estimated there's something like 9 billion tonnes of iron ore alone along the rail corridor between Yakuba and Buchanan that are available to companies to put into production.
So what the President has essentially done by the stroke of a pen with an executive order is unlock that corridor. So now others who have been holding exploration licenses for many years issued by the Ministry of Mines and Energy and holding on to these licenses and merely maybe selling them and trading them can now take those assets into production because the possibility of evacuation exists.
The barrier to them getting them into production is how do they get it into the market? How do you get it to a ship? You know, if this railway is now a commercially available, multi-user, independently operated system, then it suddenly becomes available to not just the big players, but also to other people that couldn't necessarily raise capital to build that system or build a competing system. If you have an existing rail system, then the best thing to do is to maximise the capacity that exists. And let's run it as efficiently as possible. The best way to do that is to bring an independent operator who's not commercially tied to the production at a mine site somewhere, but is actually running it for freight profit, the Liberty Corridor concept, and the concept of enabling linear infrastructure like railway to carry other infrastructure of significance, because you've already demarcated the corridor. Right. So you've got a pathway through your country that's demarcated as infrastructure. It's much easier to place other infrastructure near that, fibre optics, power infrastructure, roads. All of those things come easier because you've already got the first piece of the puzzle in place. Yeah. You don't have to spend millions per kilometre in building new railway. You've already got that step, and it's a major advantage in the mining industry, and also in a huge amount of other connected industries.
A 243-kilometre railway that runs from the Nimba Mountains into the Buchanan port is an asset that the country can leverage. It means something. It's something of value. And so when you lock it up with a single user, for example, then you limit the country's opportunities. For
every person who works in the mine itself, so inside the mining company, there's about 8 other jobs created to keep that going. So, 1 to 8 is in a fairly highly automated industrialised setting is a standard that we use when we're calculating what we call the indirect jobs as well as attached to the direct jobs. So if these projects, for instance, our project phases from small to large, and in the first phase there's maybe 600 to 800 jobs, and then in the second phase there's cracking towards 1,000 jobs as we build up, and then the indirect jobs that come with that, the mining contractors, the service providers, the people that bring in logistics and resources, the people that look after trade up and down the corridor. All of those things create thousands of jobs attached to the actual project. We have a 12-month program to bring our project on for the first phase, and then there's another 3 years of construction once the studies are complete on the second phase. So, it's a big project that's going to take us between 5 and 7 years to complete in Liberia. So, there's a lot of activity, and we may be small in our footprint now, but we intend to change that rapidly. We intend to bring as much local content as we can. We've had lots of experience of doing this elsewhere in the region, and we know it can be successful as well with the right choice of partners. So, Liberia can expect us to be focused on that, as well as focused on the rest of our stakeholders, the communities and the people who live on and around the project areas. We then can present to our board an investment decision, and as soon as that's approved, we close out. We bring the financing, the people that we've been talking to for quite a while now, that are in our data room looking at our project, and are quite keen on the project because of the economic attractiveness, and they know the attractiveness of Liberia as an investment opportunity, because it's an infrastructure investment, so it carries less risk than some of the mining investment they've looked at, and then we move fast after that to construction.
Local content's important, and my bosses have told me that directly. Now, where we have qualified Liberians available to do a work or a job, that's where the direction we're heading in. There are obviously some technical development that has to happen that will require expertise from abroad. Our ESIA work has already been concluded and has been presented to the Environmental Protection Agency for permitting. We did a couple of expressions of interest for some infrastructure work, civil works up in Nimba to actually construct the haul road from the border to Tukade, where the rail loading head is, where that would sort of be our stockpiling point. And then also an expression of interest went out on the Port of Buchanan for some logistics and marine work in the port. And multiple Liberian companies have also responded to that, to both those expressions of interest, and have been adjudicated. So what happens with ratification is now we can go back to those EOIs and make decisions on who to select so that the work can commence, as Kevin is saying. Construction both at the mine site in Guinea, construction on the road activity in Liberia, construction activity in the Port of Buchanan, where we will actually have operations.
The role of the regulator will be to set the rules, so to draw up what we call the RSOP and another acronym, but rail system operating practices or procedures. So, and they set the rules on fairness to make sure that the system itself is what's maximised. So the most efficient way to run the system, and to also to guarantee or to best way possible that everybody's allocated capacity is looked after. So the users who've paid for capacity are paying for a certain amount of capacity, and the railway is scheduled such that that capacity is met, and it's not given as a priority to a particular user for any reason. We think it's not really to Ivanhoe to decide on how that system works fairly. We can advise on it, but we expect the independent operator to run the rule on the daily operations and say, look, this is how it works today. This is the slots you have, and the capacity is met as a result of that. The NRA or the National Rail Authority will make sure the independent operator is running to the rules, and that's the sort of system the NRA runs here. The independent operator, then the users all running around on the system underneath that.
We've been pretty transparent with our negotiations. If you look on our website, you see multiple press releases about various updates, progresses, activities, things happening. We've been very transparent about this process from the get-go. When we concluded our ESIA process, we let the world know that was happening, and because there's nothing secretive about it, and we shouldn't be secretive about it. And as mentioned, we are a part of the Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative, so our agreement will be published once it's ratified. One of the aspects of our agreement, obviously, is making annual contributions to the communities most impacted by our operations and our activities. I have had meetings with the superintendents of the 3 counties that are most impacted, Nimba, Bong, and Grand Bassa. And the community people should know when there's something there to benefit them, and they should be at the table. And we'll leave that to the local communities and the local authorities to determine the best way to set up those engagements, and we will certainly be a part of that with our local representatives and myself. But it's not something that will be done behind closed doors.
Well, I hope they say it was a great first step from the Boakai government to engage a company that was able to be a foundation customer, or provide the foundation for a multi-user, the first multi-user system in Liberia, and show that the economic benefits from that have been real and achieved what we said. Q1 next year, all goes to plan. We aim to, boots on the ground, and you'll see us in jeans and shirts and out of these suits, hopefully.
Correct.